Hello and welcome everybody to the Pick Six podcast. Sam McKewon along with Evan Bland here, mid-April, the very middle of April, 9 days before Husker football's spring event. It's, what are we calling it? What's it called? The spring events games?
Yeah, the Husker games.
The Husker games.
Spring event.
Not a Husker game, but a Husker games.
Oh, yeah, multiple, yeah.
We're almost to the end of spring practice. I think we're all pretty much ready. A little bit of spring fever for everybody here. It's good to see Evan. Today is transfer portal day. The transfer portal is open as of Wednesday. We'd love it if you would read Evan's story from a few days ago. We just re-upped it online on omaha.com about how Nebraska is handling this transfer portal, understanding that it's way above the 105-man roster limit that's set by the House settlement, which is yet to be approved. It's way above that, and that's probably going to be approved. And if it is approved, then Nebraska's got to get to 105 by the fall somehow.
Yep.
And they need to figure that part of it out. So there's probably going to be some guys transferring. Nebraska will have one more scrimmage, I think, on Thursday, tomorrow, because I think they're going to take Easter weekend off. And then they'll come back next week, and they'll practice a couple of times, and then they'll have their spring event that will draw about 10,000 people in Memorial Stadium.
Well, I'm looking forward to how much attention that gets.
Well, I mean, there's food trucks and garage sale, games.
But you're testing fans.
Obstacle course.
And we've seen some other spring games already where the attendance is way down. Is Nebraska that way? They tend to be a little different than a lot of other fan bases. That's going to be really
spring
interesting.
volleyball match playing against Kansas over in Devaney.
Mm-hmm.
DBK will have her first preseason match. Then a week later, I think they play in Ord. So it's going to be a pretty cool time, I think, for Nebraska athletics. You can always subscribe to the Omaha World-Herald. It's a good time to do that. If you've got time, you got a 6-month deal in there somewhere, and that'll get you all the way through training camp, all the way through midway through the season. So it's a pretty sweet deal. Transfer portal is opening today. The one guy that was on Nebraska's football team this spring who is in the portal is Hardley Gilmore, and that's no surprise because he was kicked off the team. So he had to go into the portal, and we'll see if other guys do. Remember that the portal actually closes next Friday, technically, and players will technically still be practicing next Friday. My hunch is over the weekend, Nebraska will have discussions with players and let them know where they stand. They've probably already done that and let them make their own decisions. We'll probably see some portal action over the weekend, which means you're going to be a busy man. Maybe Monday, Tuesday. I don't know what's going to happen on Saturday and Sunday, but it'll probably be early next week when they have those discussions. You had wrote a really good story for our Sunday edition that we re-upped online about how Nebraska's handling this portal. Matt Rule had a lot of conversation about it at his Saturday presser. I'd love for you to kind of dive into what they were doing.
Well, yeah, I mean, Matt Rule made his pitch. Dana Holgerson made his pitch for why you should stay at Nebraska. I thought Rule broke it down pretty interestingly. He said there's two groups of guys. There's the guys who maybe aren't quite good enough to play at Nebraska right now, but they want to get on the field. And those are the guys that are going to go to other programs, often smaller programs, get on the field in that way. And then there's the group of guys who they feel like are good enough to play at Nebraska. And in those cases, kind of his line was, if you're a future NFL player, you're going to make your own situation better by getting better. So he was challenging his guys in that way. And I think also reminding of just the stuff around Nebraska, the facility and the training table and everything else that goes into that. What's interesting to me about this portal window, Sam, is it's not just kind of the same free agent period that we've seen. There's so many other factors related to the settlement not being finalized yet. There's the piece about it's still unregulated. Essentially, pay for play NIL is still going on. That clearinghouse isn't in effect. So schools have money to spend and they want to spend it now while it's still more of an open market. The other piece, as you mentioned, is the 105-man roster, which appears there's still momentum for that. The federal judge last week sort of opened up this idea that maybe there'd be a grandfathering in, so the players already on the roster would be able to stay. Doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Boy, they shut that down.
So it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Now, for what it's worth, I respect the fact that they didn't budge on it. I think they made a mistake in the 105-man roster.
You're all about 120, right? 115,
I think the reason they made it 105 is they mistakenly believed that they were going to ramp it up to 105 scholarships, and if they ran at 120, they'd run 120 scholarships, and you would then have to up the cap of all the other roster limits in order for Title IX compliance. I think there's a sensitivity to that, that's great. College football programs were not going to do that, and I don't know that they talked to coaches or not. There were no coaches that were taking this thing to 120. I'll be surprised if there's a lot of teams that take it to 105 scholarships. I think you're going to see it at about 95 at a lot of schools. Rule laid out kind of his vision. SEC teams are going to be around 85. You're going to see maybe a few more at Nebraska, but there was never going to be 120. And so 120 would have been a perfect roster size, and it would have allowed you to have the extra walk-ons and a few guys that were never going to be scholarship guys, but were practice guys and might play in their third or fourth year on special teams. Mm-hmm. As it is now, and this was already true, which we've described, Nebraska is going to be cutting guys that are scholarship worthy. Not cutting is the wrong word, but they're not going to be able to keep them. They're just not going to be able to keep them.
Yeah. Right around 130. So
they have 130 guys, but not all the guys that are going to leave are going to be just all walk-ons. They're not cutting this thing. They're going to lose scholarship guys, and guys that are worthy of scholarships, or however they're paying that out now. And so, they're going to have to figure it out. But I respect that they didn't do it, and here's why. So two things can be true at once. A, I think it should have been 120. B, they didn't want to do the grandfather thing. Because, and I don't blame them for this, that's going to be a nightmare to track. A nightmare to track.
That's true.
Because if you grandfather it in, what you're basically saying is everybody that's in school now can be counted above and beyond the 105, and that's where you get into, I think the extra COVID year, even though I believe that the players should have gotten it, has been a nightmare to track.
No doubt.
And so you have a bunch of guys that are you got some guys that only get to play college football for 4 years because they played 6 games as a true freshman. You got other guys that are in their 6th or 7th year because of COVID and all that. I mean, it's a nightmare to track. And so I think what they wanted to do is we're not going to have this grandfathering thing where one team has 112 guys because this guy was in school, enrolled early as a freshman, and this guy didn't enroll early. And so he doesn't count, but this guy counts, and I get it. I just wish they had changed the number. I wish they had altered the number to 120 and just said, hey, we thought they were going to scholarship it up. We were wrong. 105 is too low. We can go to 120, and nobody's going to be hurt by that. But they decided not to do that, and so it's going to stay at 105 if it gets approved. And I'm not sure there's any guarantee it's going to get approved. I think it should be, and it probably will be, but it's no guarantee.
That's true, and there could be further challenges. And
going to hear a soda open here.
This is great podcasting.
We used to have eaten chips. Remember that? I missed that.
The long-time listeners. That's right. And
5 years ago, Chris Hetty, you and me, and eating chips.
That's right.
Go ahead.
Well, the other part of the portal that's interesting to me then is if you're a fringe 105-man guy. You have a decision to make, because Matt Rule's laid it out. A lot of these guys have come to him and said, hey, I want to be a Husker until you kick me off the team, until you tell me I can't be anymore. That's tough. But it puts you, absolutely. It puts you in a spot where some of these guys have to decide, do you stay and bet on yourself to make the 105 in the fall with the risk that you might not and have no immediate landing place, or do you leave now and just kind of wonder, what could have happened? So you've got those guys. You've got guys who are sort of in part of a logjam. I think you think of the secondary in that situation. Some of those guys are going to leave. And Matt Rule, made mention of that again this week too. They had, 5 or 6 corners, 5 or so safeties that they could start at any given time. So they're managing that piece as well. And then you just have, again, the factor of what's to stop other teams from throwing out big numbers to some of Nebraska's players the way that it happened in the winter. So it's one portal window, but there are so many different motivations and situations that they're going to navigate through. And of course, the other thing to remember is this 10-day window, it doesn't mean if you're in Nebraska, you have to bring anybody in or you have to commit, players have to commit. It just means they're declaring that they're leaving. So this is really just the start of what is going to be a multi-month situation as players shop around and end up somewhere eventually. Sierra Wright was a guy last year who Nebraska got in June. So like these negotiations or deliberations are going to play out here over a lot longer than just
I think you're going to see
window.
the portal is going to be way more movement over the next 10 days because of the 105 thing.
And the money, yeah.
And the money, but also like there's guys that are going to leave. They have to, like they don't know for sure. And so I think you're going to see some more dudes go in the portal, and you're also going to see this can be, although it doesn't appear to be a market for Nico Iamaleava, this can be a market for quarterbacks. Can be. Not at his asking price. And if people don't know what we're talking about, the Tennessee quarterback who was basically thrown off his team last week for pushing too hard for more NIL/revenue sharing money. Apparently his family was pushing for that, reportedly, according to sources, and he didn't show up for practice on Friday, and Tennessee cut him.
Right.
They just cut him.
He's in the portal.
He's in the portal. He's probably. I think he's going to end up at a school that Nebraska plays. To be honest with you, I do think UCLA is a potential landing spot for him. His brother bailed on UCLA on signing day, Madden, and went to Arkansas. So I don't know, but Nico Iamaleava played at high school about 20 minutes away from the Rose Bowl, and I do think he's better than the guy they got. The guy they got is from Appalachian State. I've watched him on film. I've watched all of the quarterbacks that Nebraska's facing this year, and he's okay. I think Iamaleava is better. I do. I think he's more mobile. I think he can do a few things, throwing the football that the guy that they got isn't going to be able to do, and they got nobody else behind that guy. Their backup transferred to Maryland, where he's battling for the starting job with somebody else. Maryland might be another landing spot. He's better than anybody that Maryland has because UCLA's backup wasn't better than Nico Iamaleava. So, I think that'll be interesting to watch, but it's the money. There should be a market for quarterbacks if they're smart about it. If they want to say, hey, I'll come in for $500,000 and come and be your starting quarterback. I think there's 3 or 4 teams in the Big Ten that still need guys. Mm-hmm. They still Maryland, I think, needs a guy. Rutgers has its guy, I think, and Callie McManus. There's another tough name to pronounce, last name to pronounce, but Callie McManus, I think, is good at Rutgers, but Ohio State's going to lose some quarterbacks. Julian Sands probably the starter, but they got 5 or 4 or 5.
Yep.
So you're going to see somebody move there, and I think there's just going to be a lot more movement. And Nebraska's going to have some guys go in the portal. Now, whether they're announced while the portal's open or not, I don't know.
No, they will be.
But
because these, national guys will have access to the portal, and it'll get put out there.
Guys can declare their intention to their school to go in the portal on Friday of next week. Mm-hmm. They may not be put into the portal until the Monday or Tuesday following. Yeah. And so, it's possible that those are going to get announced this week, next week, or the week after. And we shouldn't be stunned if it's a player that everybody thought was going to be pretty good here, because there's competition, and they might be just on the edge of the 2 deep, but they're not all the way in.
So I think flipping it then is fascinating as well. So Nebraska inevitably is going to lose players they need to for all the reasons we outlined. Matt Rule left open the door to the possibility that they could add some players as well. And of course that means you have to get rid of some on the back end. But what do you think, Sam, if you're shopping the portal for Nebraska, what's a position that you think maybe they would entertain bringing in a visitor or kicking the tires on a guy?
Running back, maybe. Emmett Johnson, Quentin Ives, Mekhi Nelson. I don't know if Connor Booth and Jamarian Parker are going to play right away, so maybe you want another guy, but I think they're in pretty good shape there. Doesn't feel like they need anybody in the secondary. Feels like they've got enough guys there.
Yep.
Feels like they could lose a couple guys that they would love to keep there. Another defensive lineman, perhaps, but it's got to be the right guy who comes in at the right price. Mm-hmm. According to John Butler, they're 3 deep at the 2 middle linebacker spots. That surprised me. That statement surprised me. But as I thought about it, I'm thinking, well, he's thinking Vincent Shavers. He's thinking Marquise Watson Trent.
Yeah.
He's thinking Vince Genatone, which I believe. He's thinking...
Maybe Javen Wright?
Well, yeah. Javen Wright is one of those. Maybe Dylan Rogers, maybe Gage Stanger, who's there. He's not at the Jack. So I can see what he's probably thinking there. I don't know. There could be. They could try to replace Gilmore. I don't think they need to, but they could. They could go get another tight end. They could. I mean, that's a question position right now because you don't know the health of Markway or Nelson going into the season. If those two guys were healthy, you're cool. But they're not. I don't think they know for sure what they're going to have there in those two guys.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, the tight end one's interesting. So the running back, like, what's the profile of that guy? Is it a short yardage guy that maybe you'd be looking for? Is it
I don't think so.
Game breaker? Like, I think that part's interesting too. You're not just adding a body. Are you adding an accomplished starter, a specific situational guy? Like, what's that profile for a guy Nebraska would be looking for, do you think?
Hard to say.
Yeah.
I think it could be a short yardage guy, I guess, if they didn't think he could do it, but I think they do think he can do it. Could be just another guy that comes in who's seasoned and experienced. Again, I don't think I could be wrong, but unless they lose some big ticket guys to the portal who are like, you know what, I got an offer I just can't refuse, and I'm going to go here. Unless they lose some big ticket guys to the portal, I don't know that they're going to be adding a bunch of big ticket guys from the portal. So anybody you're going to be getting at that point is going to be a seasoned 400 level graduate class kind of guy that knows football and is going to come in here and play a lot, or you're getting a guy that's like Gabe Moore. And for what it's worth, I watched Gabe Moore last week at practice. I thought Gabe Moore looked pretty good in practice. That's a nice guy. I mean, that's a good frame. He's got some pretty good weight already. So if you could go get another guy like that, maybe you do that. I think that they're pleased with where they're going to have Elijah Jeudy now this season. I think Jeudy, was up and down in his first two seasons, but to look at him now, you're like, yeah, that guy's going to be a football player this year for them. Mm-hmm. And so I think they're willing to do the same thing with Gabe Moore. Like, it's probably going to take him a year, maybe a two, but then by the time he's a junior, he's a baller. And I think if they can go out and find another guy like that, they might try to do that. But I have a hard time seeing big ticket additions at this point. Other schools will make big ticket additions. Oklahoma just went out and got Jaden Ott, the running back from California. I'm guessing if Nebraska really wanted to get in that food fight, they could have. That's the wrong phrase for it. But, they really wanted to get in that bidding war, they could have. They have money. They have just as much money as Oklahoma. I believe that. But I don't think they feel like they need to do it because Emmett Johnson is the guy.
I think the discussion is interesting, too, when you kind of combine it with the context of the spring. So, like, what we've heard in the last month, what the coaches have seen in the last month, obviously is going to inform that decision. So, like, for example, at the receiver spot, if you would have said a month ago that Harley Gilmore was dismissed, I would have thought, man, they probably want to go out and find a guy to take that spot. But based on what we've heard from Isaiah Mosey and Cortez Mills, like, you feel like that spot's a little bit more set. Kind of the same thing.
I think they took a flyer on Gilmore. They did not feel strongly about taking him, and I think they did that as a whatever for Da'Keel Shorts because Da'Keel Shorts stood on the table for him. Then I don't know that Da'Keel Shorts will get another opportunity to stand on a table for a guy if that's how that turned out. I'm sure that's frustrating on some level. Hey, we brought this guy here. We we set up a deal for him. We gave him a lot of reps, and and we had to remove him from the team. That's never a good deal.
But I think offensive line's another example of that, where you kind of went into the spring, you're like, what's the status of these guys who are hurt? And you've got 4 guys who started games who are sidelined, but you hear how that position's progressing. You see what some of those guys are bringing to the table, the development of a lot of the second-year guys, third-year guys. Like, it doesn't seem like maybe the urgency is as high. I'm trying to think of a position where it would go the other way, and other than a tight end is really the only one that comes to mind if Carter Nelson and Mac Markway are unavailable and you feel like you need somebody with some experience to join Lindenmeyer and Harburg making that transition, but there just aren't a lot of spots.
Probably going to be in the mix there.
Yeah, his name's come up once or twice.
There.
Yeah,
the kid, I can't remember his name. Danny something, I can't remember his name. He's a factor there. I think Echternach is probably your 3 right now. Ingwerson is a big inline guy that's almost like another offensive tackle.
Danny King.
Danny King. There you go. They have some options there, but Echternock can move. I mean, both Lindenmeyer and Echternock are players. They're going to play at Nebraska, I think.
Well, Rule said they weren't going to entertain bringing anyone in unless they were a difference maker. So something would have to align. I wouldn't be surprised if, you set the over-under at a half a guy, maybe 1.5. Like, I don't know that they're going to add more than 1 or 2 if the opportunity comes up. It's just my hunch.
We'll see.
We will.